All right, welcome to a Monday edition of Media Row Podcast with me, Justin Miller. A later one today because I was at the Nap Center early this morning for Kids Day as the Drake women tipped off at 11 o'clock in front of 5,000 screaming young kids all across the great state of Iowa, mostly in the metro area. My school that I grew up going to at Southeast Polk was there. Also, my elementary school that I went to with Des Moines Public Schools was there. So it was really cool. I will say the key to victory for that was Tylenol. It's a great atmosphere, but man, kids just all have that, they all have one pitch and it pierces. I mean, it's a cool thing. The players like it, the coaches like it. At schools do it all across the country. But man, earplugs are a must, which I forgot. I was trying to find some in the house, couldn't find them, and I was sitting there and I'm like, I took Tylenol, but that may not get me there. I think I may be coming home with a headache. Then my friend at Drake and Carson Culp, who does some great film and videography for the Drake women's basketball team, and just Drake Athletics did it for the football team, has done it for the men in years prior. Follow him on Twitter at Carson Culp and Instagram. He comes over and he's like, "Do you not have earplugs?" And I go, "No, I couldn't find them." He's like, "I got you." Hustled back and grabbed me a few. So huge shout out to him. Major win, because I would have been hurting by now. But a later show today because of all of that. But we have a lot to get to. Drake wins their third straight game, an easy win at 11 o'clock as they took down USC Upstate 84-34. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then hear from Allison Pullman as well. I was able to get her a few questions and get a few videos from her after the game. And then Coach McCollum, we'll talk about him and just preparing for Kansas State tomorrow in what is right now the biggest game of Drake's season, as they were once again left out of the top 25, which we will again get to later on in the show. We'll also break down the Missouri Valley Conference standings as of right now on Monday, December 16th, and how it may shape up come March, and how there's still so much basketball to be played. So a lot to get to. Very excited. Thank you again so much for joining Media Row Podcast with me, Justin Miller. Thank you again for following us on @MediaRowPod on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Justin_C Miller. You can also follow me on TikTok at Justin Miller on Air on TikTok, which shout out to everyone for commenting on my Seahawk video from last night. That was brutal. You can hear my rant about it on TikTok because I'm not going to go through that again. So let's jump into the positives, because today Drake wins their third straight against USC Upstate. Drake played 13 players again in a non-conference game where Allison Pullman was able to try out a lot of different sets. Forced 27 turnovers. That's a season high as of right now for this Drake team, which I talked with Pullman afterwards about how this Drake team, the identity for the Bulldogs with her, it's been get the ball and run. And now I think this season, while that is definitely their identity on offense, is they like to run the ball. For this team, defensive mindset, the defense has been outstanding. It's physical. It's in your face. Dinnebeer's in every starting guard's pocket. It's awesome. It's great to watch. Just the physicality of their defense. And they do it without fouling. Now you're going to get a few ticky-tacky fouls when you're that aggressive, but overall they do it clean. And that's a contribution to the coaching. That's a contribution to the leaders of the team and their experience, because you have so many experienced players. Courtney Becker, a graduate student, Anna Miller, Katie Dinnebeer, all seniors. And then the young players come in and the transfers come in and they fill in perfectly. So the defensive intensity has been great to watch. Pullman talked about afterwards how there is a different kind of sense of pride looking at the stat sheet and even the moments that happen in the game on defense that don't get put on the box score that you feel rather than the ones you see on the highlights, on the stat sheet, on the box score, on the stuff that people talk about that happen more on the offensive side of the ball. When stuff happens on defense, that's a contribution to a team's hustle, a team's grit, and a team's want, I think. And I think Pullman agreed too when I was asking her about it because, man, it is just an awesome sight watching this team play defense. They move, they communicate. I liked how Pullman keeps switching in that 2-3 zone, which I thought played better when you had Miller and Tatum Gray both playing in the post. But once again, a non-conference game, there's not a lot of X's and O's you can get out of an 84-34 victory. Pulling a few, of course, like the defensive intensity. Anna Miller hit her another three-point shot. That now makes 5 consecutive games where she's hit a three-pointer, which is a career high. Up until this point, the most threes she's hit in consecutive games was 2. 2 games she's hit a three-pointer. So really showing her growth and her confidence of shooting. And it just shows how you get her rolling from the three-point line. Man, a team that likes to cut and drive into the paint, you spread the defense, that's just going to get easier. Easier and easier. So Anna Miller, 5 straight games now with the three-point shot. Ava Hawthorne has been a dog, and pun intended. Ava Hawthorne continued success, and Pullman was very excited to talk about her, and you'll hear from her in a few, but just a few thoughts on her continued success. 28 points in the last 2 games, scores 10 today, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 3 from the three-point line, and just looks comfortable coming off the bench. And watching her today from the sideline, I was sitting there basically going, not only does she know her role, but she could easily play into that starter's role. I think the starting lineup is set, and I think it runs just fine. I mean, clearly 84-34, and it doesn't look like Hawthorne's getting upset with her playing time. She played today 22 minutes. So, like I said, I think she understands her role, but if anything happened, and hopefully injuries don't take down this team, but if that happens, it's a long season, it could. Ava Hawthorne could easily fill in a spot in the starting lineup. But let's say everything runs smoothly. Mark this down. December 16th, a Monday, Justin Miller on Media Row Podcast said this and was right. Ava Hawthorne is going to win the 6th Player of the Year in the Missouri Valley. If she keeps playing like this, just consistent, efficient, confident, I don't see who beats her out. She is so good. She has a beautiful form from the three-point line, can get into the paint, looks like Dinnebeer with just like almost wanting to be hit as she's going in for a layup, likes to be hit when she goes in for the layup. She is an outstanding player. And I think Pullman's excited to talk about her because I said right before I phrased the question before this video you'll see from Pullman, I go, I know we talked about her last week, and she stopped me mid-sentence and she goes, let's talk about Ava again. So here's Coach Allison Pullman after Drake's 84-34 victory over USC Upstate, talking about Ava Hawthorne's continued success. So
I think
again,
the great thing about Ava in this being her junior
down.
year is
Sixth player of the
she's
year in the
really
Missouri Valley.
leaning
I
into
will
the
say
experience that
early
she's
on
had thus
this year.
far. And
She's
I would
been
say that, like,
consistent,
I don't think any of our
confident,
coaches are
and
shocked to
Couldn't ask
watch
for
her
more.
flourish. And she's
Another
just done a
thing I
phenomenal
noticed
job. And I think what
for
we
Allison
see
Pullman in
is
this
her
Drake
production on the
basketball team
offensive end, but she's been
was
fantastic
just her
defensively.
interactions
And so
with
it's
the
been
players.
fun to
She
really
does
watch
it
that.
a lot
I would
throughout
love
the
to
game,
say
and
that
I know
Ava could get
coaches
Sixth Player of
are
the Year,
always
but we
talking
constantly are in
during
conversation
games,
as far as
but
what
this
is
is a
the best
different
for our
kind of
team as far as the
interaction.
starting lineup. And
It's
Ava
almost
gives
like
us
a
a
friend.
huge boost off the bench.
They're laughing, and yes, it's easier. You're not going to see them laughing as much in conference games, but Pullman knows how to interact with each player, and today it just became really visible to me how she knows exactly how to interact with each one. For Maggie Taylor, freshman center, she knows she'll sit down with her on the bench, and it's like you can visually see the X's and O's going on of like, all right, this is what you need to do. With Tatum Gray, you could see her talking about like, got to get big when you box out, and just was very X's and O's oriented with them. Katie Dinnebeer, she knows almost like, and she'll say this in the video coming up, of what buttons to push. And it was just really cool to see from the sidelines of a coach going into an interaction with a player, having fun with her players, laughing with her players. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was her trust in her players. And that comes from having as many, seniors and graduate students that she has on this team, which we mentioned earlier on. But the trust in her players is a really cool and unique sight to see. And I say unique because we've seen this only a couple of times, but during timeouts, media timeouts, or anything, she always has the players go into a huddle and discuss first. So today, media timeout hits, Anna Miller's standing up, 4 other players sitting on the bench, other players around her. She's talking through situations, and every player is dead-eye locked in on Anna Miller. It was awesome. As a fan, as just someone who loves the game of basketball, you respect seeing a coach have that much trust in her players to be able to go, you guys go discuss what you think needs to be fixed first. Then we'll intervene. And then it was cool to see from just the players having trust and belief in one another to be like, yeah, you can tell me I messed up and I will listen to you. That was really cool. And then, Pullman and the coaches intervene, and then they, discuss. But I've only seen that happen a handful of times. And the biggest one, the automatic reaction I had, and now this is my NBA fandom coming out. I'm a huge Spurs fan. Grew up a Tim Duncan, big fundamental. Wasn't a big showboater. So I loved the way the Spurs played basketball. I remember in those Heat finals, I think it was 2013. They were in Miami, and Miami had just hit a big 3, and I wish I knew what game it was. But they had hit a big 3, and Popovich calls a timeout. First thing that happens is Tony Parker sits down, and everyone gathers around, and he's discussing. And I told Pullman this, and Pullman goes, well, I hope we start playing like the 2013 Spurs. And we had a nice laugh and talked about that. But that's what it reminds me of just when you have that many group of veteran players and that much trust in one another. So that's my take on it. And here's Pullman, who I think gives a better answer on her trust in her players.
I mean, ultimately, it's about your team having conversation. And that chemistry is built not necessarily through when you're non-vocal. You know, like there's a lot of things you can read body language wise, but that's their opportunity to talk about their reads, their frustrations, their positive things that they want to, you know, really give someone a shout out, or just talk about like problem solving, maybe what they're seeing on the floor. So what's great about that is it gives them an opportunity to run ideas off of each other. And then when our coaching staff, like, steps into that situation, then now we can offer each other, you know, different ideas and different solutions on, hey, let's try this as we head into the next amount of live play. Just fully knowing what drives and how to push each of their buttons. It's not necessarily, when you say push their buttons, it sounds so negative, but I think when you understand fully like what drives them, then you're able to, in some of those moments, provide just a touch of comic relief. And so Katie and I's interaction, which happens actually more often, just because there's some things, I mean, she's been here, thank goodness, you know, going into her senior year and this being her 4th year. But there's a lot of things that drive Katie, you know, to be excellent. And what's fun is to watch her do it with a smile on her face.
So again, a huge thank you to everyone at Drake and Allison Pullman for setting up those interviews, for letting me come in freelance and do this with Drake. It's an honor, and I love doing it. We'll be back Saturday for the men's game, and we'll be there throughout the rest of the season and for the future, I hope. But Pullman, always an easy, calm person to talk to. Fenley is like that with Iowa State. Jensen is like that at Iowa. It's just, in terms of women's basketball, 3 coaches like that in the state are great. And to be fair, I haven't spoken with the UNI women's head coach before, so not trying to leave them out, but those are just the 3 I've had personal interactions with, and they're always great. But Pullman, thank you again so much, and definitely we'll have her on the show multiple times throughout this year. Moving forward, give a quick, with it being a Monday, a brand new week, here is what the standings are in the Missouri Valley Conference for the women's basketball side of things. Right now, in first place, you have Missouri State at 7-3, but everything looks pretty open. I mean, no one's truly running away with it, and it's the same way in the men's, but it just seems more jumbled in the women's. So Missouri State 7-3, Murray State 5-3. Then you have Illinois State at 6-4, Bradley 5-4. Then 3 teams, Drake, UNI in there as well, tied at 5-5. And you look at these 6-7 teams, none of them you look at and go, they're going to run away with this conference. I think UNI is going to be a huge test for Drake. Bradley is going to be a test for Drake. Missouri State is going to be a test for it. Like every team this is a great balanced conference. So that's your Missouri Valley Conference standings right now for the women's basketball slate. Moving on to the Drake men's basketball side of things. Biggest test tomorrow coming up so far this season for the Drake men. I know they've had games against Miami, Vanderbilt, where championships were on the line, and the Charleston Classic, but this one I think we'll just start to, in terms of a nationwide sign of respect. Last Friday, I mentioned how I think if they beat Kansas State, this would get them ranked. My bias may have been coming out at that point because I just don't know. I think it definitely earns you respect. But looking back on it, even when they went 18-0 to start the year, it took DeVries and that team until like win 16 to finally get ranked. And I'm going to pause here for a second because I got to take a drink of water. But it took those guys until about win 15 or 16 to get ranked and then they lost to Valpo on the road. So I don't know if Drake necessarily gets ranked, but it's a great way to start earning respect because already Drake's getting forgotten about. They're one of 5 teams left unbeaten, and today's top 25 came out. The top 3 is the same: Tennessee, Auburn, and Iowa State. Dayton is a new mid-major that's jumping into the top 25 with a huge win over Marquette last week. Dayton, a team that has beat UConn and Marquette already, and we're only into the third week of December. But so this Drake team getting forgotten about, they had 67 votes in the top 25 a week ago. 52 today. Only 52 votes. So you want to earn that respect? Go into Kansas City and kick some ass. Jerome Tang. I've never been a Jerome Tang fan. Last year covering Iowa State for KASI, his interviews always felt, he never did any wrong. It was always the refs. It was always the other team. And for me, that's just not the kind of coach I always like. Bill Self is a guy that Cyclone fans loved interviewing him because he was a guy that would keep it real. And it felt like Jerome Tang never did. So, Drake, go earn some respect. Go into Kansas City and kick some Wildcat ass. That's all I'm asking for. And we'll get into more of the X's and O's and what to expect for tomorrow during tomorrow's show when Michael Admire, the play-by-play announcer for the Drake men's basketball team, he's going to join us on the show at 9 a.m. The show will get posted around noon. But yeah, he'll be up and early in Kansas City with me, so that'll be fun. So we won't get into the X's and O's in today's show, but I do want to get into just, man, when I looked at this schedule earlier this year, you see a new head coach, new players, and Kansas State on the road on the schedule. I'll be honest, confidence wasn't high. I didn't know who Ben McCollum really was, how he would adjust. I knew he had great success, but I'm going to read off some more numbers of why I should have been smacked in the face. But, man, you never know how a guy is going to adjust, how players are going to adjust to Division I play. And Drake has handled it well, and I think it speaks to their coach. While I speak about Jerome Tang, how he kind of pushes things off, players reflect their coaches. Not all the time, but most of the time, players reflect their coaches. If a coach gets really upset about a foul, loses their mind, the players are going to lose their mind about every other foul moving forward. If a coach is very calm, cool, and collected, for the most part, the players will play that way. Look at Iowa State, number 3 team in the country. TJ Otzelberger you don't see that dude flailing his arms. And the players all react the same way. High intensity, but they don't get too high or too low. And McCollum has done the same thing with Drake. So yes, there is a reason that Ben McCollum is giving me a higher sense of confidence going into tomorrow's game against Kansas State. And I'm going to read you off some numbers from his time at Northwest Missouri State. And it's eye-popping. And I'm so happy he waited for that call from Brian Harden and Drake to take this job, because he wanted the job back when Darren got it. And he didn't get it, of course. So then he went back to Northwest Missouri State and waited. You don't get that anymore in this day and age. It's all about now. And so I think that speaks to his character. And as a Drake Bulldog fan since I was 8 years old, very cool thing to see. So I'm about to read some numbers of why Ben McCollum is just a winner. These are eye-popping. So in his 15 years at Northwest Missouri State, Ben McCollum, 394 wins, 91 losses, 4 Division II titles. This includes 12 regular season titles, 11 straight that he won. Prior to him, Northwest Missouri State only had 4 in 62 years. And now Drake, if they take down Kansas State and Kansas City tomorrow, they could be 10-0. And Ben McCollum started with 10-plus wins and no losses 5 times throughout his career at Northwest Missouri State, including 2018 and 19 when he went 38-0. And in his 15 years, he averaged a record of 26 wins and 6 losses. The man is just a winner. And it's incredible to watch the ability to go from Division II and Division I as seamlessly as he has and how the players have is outstanding. Manyao coming from Wyoming, Division I player, but you have Jackson coming from Northwest Missouri State. You have Sturts. You have Abreu, Miscari. 4 of your 5 starters from Division II. And you're 9-0, chance to go 10-0. And you have to take down a tough Kansas State team. What another great test. Because you've already beaten Miami. You've already beaten Vandy. I don't think anyone scares this Drake team. And I think that's part of McCollum. I don't think he's afraid of anyone. I think he knows his team and his team knows him. It's a really cool thing to watch. And we'll get into the X's and O's tomorrow with Admire. But I just wanted to read you guys off those numbers from McCollum because what he has done in this time at Northwest Missouri State, yes, I saw those numbers when he was hired. I'm not going to lie. And I think I'm along with a lot of people. When you see those, you go, well, it's Division II. Now you're playing big boy basketball in Division I. How are you going to handle it? And then he goes 9-0, and then you go, well, look at these numbers. The guy's a winner. So Drake, 9-0, opportunity to go 10-0 against Kansas State tomorrow. We'll hit it tomorrow morning with Admire, get all the X's and O's, try to figure this one out before we settle down that night to just enjoy some good, hard-fought basketball. But before we end today's show, let's give a look into the Missouri Valley Conference men's basketball standings. Drake on top, 9-0. Belmont, 9-2, which is perfect. Hopefully Belmont and Drake just stay at 1-2 because Sunday after Christmas, you have Drake in their first home Valley Conference game taking on Belmont. Pack the nap. That's going to be an electric atmosphere. And Drake could be possibly in the top 25. I'm not as confident anymore saying what teams are going to be in the top 25. I don't know why I try to be, because this time of the year, it changes so fast. It changes day to day almost. But so Drake 9-0, Belmont 9-2, Bradley 8-2, and then you and I, the only Missouri Valley Conference team right now playing tonight. They play Montana, is the only Missouri Valley Conference game. So that is your rundown of the Missouri Valley Conference standings as it is on Monday, December 16th. Again, thank you to Allison Pullman and Drake for letting me cover the game this morning at 11 a.m. Thank you to Tylenol for supporting me throughout the Kids Day. And thank you to everyone who subscribes, follows on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, YouTube. Thank you for enjoying these Media Row podcasts. I love doing them. I'm excited to grow this and make it even better week by week, show by show. Tomorrow will be an even better show because Admire will be on. Michael Admire, play-by-play voice of the Drake Bulldogs, on tomorrow to break down the Kansas State game. It'll be Drake versus Kansas State heavy. That is what tomorrow's show will be. So tune in tomorrow. We'll get it posted at our normal time around that noon-ish mark on YouTube, and as well as a few highlights on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and you can go and follow at Media Row Pod on YouTube, Media Row Pod on Twitter. Follow me at Justin_Miller on Twitter, as well as Justin Miller on Air on TikTok. Thank you again so much, and have a great night.